we're going to have ice, the application of very cold water. And it helps in different aspects of managing one's body by improving the circulation. As we wait for our guest to get ready and join us, I'd like to ask my live audience here a few problems that they may have. What is the night that you struggled with sleep and you didn't know what to do? What could have happened that day, and how did you solve that conflict? We have a free roaming mic, so you can actually use that. Let me ask again, anybody here who has struggled with lack of sleep? Perhaps that makes it a bit clearer. Or are we all the happy people when we get to bed, it's 2 minutes and we're gone? Okay, I see nods and I see yes. Could you have one of us just use the mic and then share with us, what is it that why would you not go to sleep? And yet sleep is one of the most important human functions, resting. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you find that most of the time, because of, some people think okay, I don't want to preempt. Let me first hear before I, I go ahead and start to answer the question. So yeah, please go ahead. Why would you not sleep? Why would you be looking for sleep? Turning to the left, turning to the right, and thinking, where has sleep gone to? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I had sleep problems from December to the month of February. Mm-hmm. I would go to bed and not sleep until 4 or sleep at 5 until 8. But I realized I was dealing with a lot of things, high stress levels. I was very anxious about many things, and I think it was having a toll on my sleep patterns.
Mm-hmm. So anxiety is truly one of the reasons that many people actually do not sleep. So if we can actually have the reasons why we lack sleep, you'll find on top of it is anxiety. Any other reason that you could be struggling with sleep that we're going to address tonight? Thank you for that. Yes, we have somebody else here.
I could also add hormonal reasons, mm-hmm. pregnancy, childbirth, and then also the cycle of children having to nurse at night. I mean, I guess that's for ladies.
Mm-hmm. So a hormonal imbalance, let me do that a little bit better.
I would say hormonal changes.
Changes is better, actually. It's true. You can imagine a pregnant lady, 7 months, 9 months, 8.5, maybe twins, heavy with twins, how difficult it is to sleep. So at that point, besides the hormonal changes, there's the physical changes in the body. And that you would struggle with sleep. What about breathing at night? Because you have 1 or 2 infections, anybody? Or all of us, when we have our flus, we are happy to have our sleep. Mm-hmm. Let's hear from the back there.
I wanted to answer the reasons, but not necessarily the infections.
Sure.
So another reason probably that kind of keeps me awake would be stress. I probably can put that together with anxiety. But besides that, there is also the screen time. Mm-hmm. Screen time also really interferes with my sleep. And I think I forgot the other one. But yeah, screen time.
Yes, screen time is big, especially the blue light. And we love our cell phones and our news in the evening or TV, watching TV. And of course, many people say, I have to watch news before I go to bed. So if you're going to watch the 9 o'clock news and you're going to sleep thereafter, for sure it's going to interfere with how fast you're going to fall asleep or how well you're actually going to fall asleep. Another reason?
Yeah, the reason was fatigue.
Fatigue.
Sometimes there's some chronic fatigue that you usually have, which is just taken away by exercise. So sometimes you have this fatigue. You can be tired, but you cannot sleep. You're so tired.
Excess fatigue.
Yes, excess fatigue.
True. So if you have excess fatigue, especially if you've had a long journey, or you're very anxious, or you've done so much, you actually would not fall asleep so easily. So you find you would sleep possibly the next day if you've actually even come from a very long journey or a long trip of 14 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours maybe in the plane. You are not unlikely to sleep that first day for some people, but for others, they would easily fall asleep. Is this it? Oh, okay, we have another reason right here.
I don't know if it's me alone, but I prefer eating earlier in the day, like probably before 7.
Yes.
So there are days when you leave work quite late, and your last meal was very early in the morning, and you feel like, I'm not dying, and I have to eat. I can't kill myself. And that night for me is usually not the best night. When I eat much later or closer to my bedtime, the quality of sleep is not as good as when I eat earlier in the day. Yeah, so I would say time of eating or feeding time, something like that.
Yes, the time of eating. Let me take that one down. So the time of eating just before bedtime, the time of the last meal especially, would affect the quality of your sleep. Does any of you know when you actually eat a heavy meal and then go to bed, and then there are these people chasing you, or you're falling into this pit that is, the pit that you can't quite get to fall inside, but you keep falling. Or there are these, I grew up in Maasai land, so there are cows. So the cows were always chasing me when I ate heavy meals, with big horns. So that happens when your last meal is too close, because obviously the digestion has not shut. So what that means, activity is going on, the brain is active, sleep will be interrupted. We can have one last reason why, even as we transition into our session. Yes, carry on, please. Why would you not sleep? Why would you have insomnia?
Oh, I don't know if my reason will interfere with the third reason, screen time. For me, I get difficulty in sleeping when the lights are on in my room.
When lights are on.
Yeah.
So bright light. So bright light also would affect good quality sleep. And so those are many reasons why somebody would actually not be able to sleep really well. And that's why this evening we want to go into the practical sessions of what is it that can or you can do at home to just improve the quality of your sleep. One that I've not seen there that I'm so familiar with is when my nose is blocked, or I have a flu, or something is just not working right and I'm sick. Sleep then becomes poorer. So if you actually have an infection, whatever it may be, so with any infection in your system, then yes, sleep will become disrupted. You're not able to sleep. And water is an excellent tool to help you improve the quality of your sleep. So this and more is what we are going to cover this evening. So I'm really glad to now transition. Just give us 3 minutes as we prepare and have our next session begin. So don't go away. Stay here, wait for us even as we just start our next session. now hot and ready. And we are so thankful to have Barbara. She's now here, ready to take us through the session. I see our online audience. I can see Newton Osiamo saying there's always a mosquito that disturbs him. And that makes his sleep to become a problem. Maybe, Barbara, will you take away the mosquitoes? And I see also people who snore a lot. They struggle, the snoring, the sleep.
Can be quickly fixed.
Yes. So I want to introduce Barbara O'Neill, who comes to us from Missy. I already said that earlier. Today we are going to do practical demonstration that's going to help all of us to sleep like a baby. Over to you, Barbara.
Thank you. So what I'm going to be speaking about tonight is water therapy. And water therapy is a very simple thing to do. It is a very powerful thing to do, and everyone has water in their home. But what I'd like to begin with is to go over the basic principles of why water therapy is so effective. Earlier, we discussed the principle found in the Bible. It's found in Leviticus 17:11, where the Bible says the life of the flesh is in the blood. And the reason why the life of the flesh is in the blood is because blood is the carrier of oxygen. And oxygen is the most vital element needed for life. In our first session on Monday, we showed how cancer cannot live in the presence of oxygen. We've looked at the importance of breathing long, slow and deep and through our nostrils and out through our nostrils to ensure that we're putting adequate oxygen in the body so that the blood has good amounts of oxygen. So the oxygen carrier is the blood. The blood also carries the nutrients to every cell. The blood carries the water to every cell. The blood also carries white blood cells. Now, our white blood cells are our internal army. They're the fighters of disease. But the blood also does something else, and it carries away waste. And so when you think about it, any part of the body that's not working well, all we really need is more blood. And the most powerful way to move blood to an area is to use water. And water can be used in three ways: as a liquid, water; as a solid, and that is ice. We have a bowl of ice here. That's the solid water. And the third way is as a gas, and that is steam. And many people are familiar with putting their head over a bowl of boiling water and inhaling the steam when they have a congested nose or sinus problems. Also, at our health retreat, we have a steam sauna that our guests go into every evening. It's like a little hut. And the steam heats the body up, and when the body heats up, the blood moves faster. And when the blood moves faster, healing in the body increases and the ability to throw off waste increases. And that's why we have a steam sauna at our health retreat. But I'd like to have a look at how the hot and colds work in the body. And I will illustrate this. So hot water. When hot water is applied to the body, it has a stimulating effect. So if ever you're cold and you get into a hot shower, you feel the tingles. So hot has a stimulating effect. And the stimulation is the stimulation of blood. And if you have a hot shower, and when you've finished, your body's quite red, that's blood. It's stimulated blood. And the hot water is touching the skin, so the blood moves to the skin. Now, if you stay in that hot shower or that hot bath, after a while, everything slows down. And we know it slows down because the body starts to feel very relaxed. it takes 3 minutes. Once the hot water is applied, it takes 3 minutes to get from stimulating to the slowing down. Now with the cold, it's a little different. So with the cold, when cold water is applied to the body, oh, it's stimulating. If you finish your hot shower with cold and you turn the hot off and you've only got cold, it's very stimulating. And it doesn't take long before it gets to the slowing down. So with the cold, the difference is it only takes 30 seconds. Only takes 30 seconds for the stimulating to get to the slowing down. And this is why if someone's in cold water for too long, they can suffer from hypothermia and die. And that very famous sea accident, the Titanic, when the Titanic hit the iceberg and the Titanic went down, a lot of the people that were in that water, they died. And they died from hypothermia. Their whole body just slowed down till eventually it stopped. We are warm-blooded creatures. So when cold touches our body, there's a reaction. And that reaction is the stimulation. It's almost as if the body says, cold's coming, we know what that can do to the body, so quick. It's a reaction. The reaction is stimulation. So the reaction of cold water touching the body is stimulation. So we're going to make a fine line through this, because understanding this allows us to understand how hydrotherapy works, especially the alternating hot and cold. Now we've got another effect of the cold, and that's the intrinsic effect. So when the cold touches the body, there's a reaction, which is stimulation. But the intrinsic, or the inherent effect of cold, is to the slow down and stop. So what I'm giving you here is the basic reasons why hydrotherapy works. When hot touches the skin, the intrinsic effect is stimulation. The intrinsic effect is stimulation. And one way to explain that is we are warm-blooded creatures. And so when the hot water touches the body, it intrinsically stimulates. The reaction when hot water is touching the body is a slowing down. So in hydrotherapy, we use the intrinsic effect of hot and the reaction effect of cold. You see that? That's what we use in hydrotherapy. So usually, let me illustrate, which will help. So let's say I have injured my hand, and I've been working with a man whose hand went through a roller. And once the initial effect had settled down, he did hot and colds. And so with the hot, you put the hot water in the bowl, And the temperature must be what the person can cope with. And if the person can't cope with it very hot, that's all right. Because after their hand has been in the ice cold, they can handle it a little bit hotter. So we always have a kettle of boiling water. Here's our kettle of boiling water. And we always have ice in the cold. So the hotter the hot and the colder the cold, the better the reaction. So when we do this, and I'd like a little bit of feedback here, and if you're not sure, that's perfectly fine, it's how we learn. How long, students, do you think the hand should be in the hot water? 3 minutes. And before the hot gets to its reaction effect, which is a slowing down, we're going to take it out of the hot tub and put it into the cold with ice cubes in it. Students, how long will we leave it in the cold?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. And we want to get it out of the cold before the intrinsic effect of cold kicks in to slow it down, because we want to move blood. And usually this whole process we do 3 times. Then the student may ask, why 3? When you do the hot and then the cold, then the hot and then the cold 3 times, you are moving blood in a massive way. And the body can begin to get quite exhausted after 3 times. So 3 times is enough. Now, if the situation's serious and the person's in a lot of pain, you could do the hot and colds every hour or every 2 hours. But it is far more effective to do it like that rather than do it 6 times in a row, where you start to exhaust the body symptoms. So what are you stimulating? Because we are using the stimulating effect of hot and the stimulating effect of cold. We're stimulating blood. So I'm going to give you a story to illustrate. But by the way, this simple treatment of hot and cold has been used for centuries, and in the area of pain relief, it is without equal. And do you remember last night I told you about the man who put the sickle in the heel of his foot, and his foot was up like a big red balloon 3 days later, and a big red line going up? And when he was brought to me, reading his body language, I would have assessed that his pain levels were probably about 9 out of 10. That is extreme. When I put his foot into the hot water, it was too hot. When you've got a foot like that, it can be very tender. Whereas my foot probably could have gone in that water. I tested it with my hand, but I could see straight away it was too hot for him. So I just threw a few ice cubes in and got it to lukewarm. And I got it, and often you can read body language clearer than what they say with their mouth, because sometimes people say it to please you. And the lukewarm he could handle. How long did I leave it? 3 minutes. And then put it into the ice cold. And often that ice cold can be very relieving, especially his foot was so hot and swollen. Now the beauty of that cold water, it's able to take the heat out of the body and into the water, and that's why it's good to have ice cubes. While it's in there, I put a little bit more boiling water into here, and I bring it up to hot. And I put my hand in, and I test that it's good. Now remember, it doesn't have to be too hot. Now I put his foot into the hot water, and I'm reading his face, and I'm saying to him, is that okay? Is that okay? Yeah, it is okay, because I know there's almost a bit of a numbing effect from the cold. but I don't want to make it too hot. How long do I leave it in the hot? 3 minutes. And then I take it out back into the ice cold, and I get the boiling water and keep it up a little bit hotter. And put my hand in it and just test that that temperature's okay. And if he's unsure, get him to put his hand in it. Get him to put his foot in it. It's very important to work with people. You never force. After the second cold, we go back into the third hot. And how long are we in the cold? 30 seconds. And we want to get it out of there before it slows down, because when it slows down, the blood flow slows down. See, often in an injury, the blood tends to sit or pool in an area. And we want to move that blood. We want fresh supplies of oxygen, fresh supplies of nutrients, fresh supplies of water. And then as the old blood is taken away, it's taking away the waste. Plus, when we bring the fresh supplies of blood in, we're bringing more white blood cells. And then I put his foot into the hot. And I'm watching his face. Are you okay with this? Yes, yes, yes. And he is handling that. And then after 3 minutes, back into the cold. And in this last cold, I watch his body relax. When we're in pain, the body tends to almost unconsciously tighten. And I see his body relax. Looking at his body, his face, I would now assess that his pain levels have gone from 9 out of 10 to 5 out of 10. That's remarkable. How long did that take? Have you done the maths? 11, 12 minutes? 12 minutes? 10 and a half. How long does it take for a Panadol or ibuprofen, some sort of painkiller, how long does it take for it to kick in? Usually 30 to 40 minutes. This is more powerful than any drug. And this is why one of the first things I said to you is that hydrotherapy has been used for centuries. And in the area of pain relief, it is without peer. It is without equal. How simple is that? I could see by his body language. I said, how is that? He said, that is the most relief I have had for days. And then I put the grated potato on his foot, and by then he could walk a little bit, he could limp. Came back after 2 hours, I did this again. And this time the foot wasn't as tender. I didn't have to make it lukewarm. I made it probably not as hot as my foot could stand, but warmer than lukewarm. Maybe the temperature we have our shower at. And we did the hot and colds again, and I saw his body relax even more. And I would assess that his pain levels had now come down to 3 out of 10. Isn't that incredible? Did you know that nurses used to do this in hospitals? I have the textbook, the nurse's textbook. It's called NIPES, Hydrotherapy for Nurses. But in page 127 of the Ministry of Healing, there's an interesting sentence that explains why they don't use it anymore. The use of natural remedies requires an amount of care and effort that many are not prepared to give. It is so much easier, and I understand often nurses, they're short-staffed, especially since the regulations came in that you couldn't be a nurse unless you had the vaccine. A lot of nurses have walked off with that. So as a result, we're even more short-staffed now. And nurses don't have time. They don't have 10 minutes. It's far easier to come in and just give a drug. Just give a drug. So I understand. That's why I say have mercy on the nurses. But isn't it interesting, if 100 years ago you did nursing, you were taught this. You were taught hydrotherapy, and you were taught the principles of hydrotherapy. God has given me a brain that I need to know why. So when someone says, do hot and colds, it's good for you, that, I want to know why. And I believe God put it in each one of us to want to know why. And the Proverbs 14 verse 6, knowledge is easy to him that understand. Students, now that I've given you this understanding, you now automatically have the knowledge, don't you, of why this would work. And you don't necessarily have to explain this in this much detail to the people you're doing it to. When you start talking about intrinsic factors and reactions, you might lose them. And this is why I wanted this board, so that you could see the effect of the hot and the effect of the cold, and why those two are used in hydrotherapy. So let me give you another story, and this is of a little boy who's about 7. I was seeing his mother, and I noticed this little 7-year-old boy was standing there with his finger like this. And when I looked at his finger, it was about twice the size of that it should be. And I said, what happened to the finger? The finger was red, it had like a volcano on it, and the top was white. It was closed. So that would have been pus. You know what pus is? Dead white blood cells doing their job. And I said, what happened to the finger? She said, oh, it's cellulitis. Do you know what cellulitis means? Inflammation of the cell. Well, we can see that. But I wanted to know why. I said, what happened? She said, well, he had a blister there, the blister burst, and he's playing matchbox cars in the dirt. So what's happening now? Dirt is getting in there. You see, our skin is a suit of armour. Our skin is an amazing organ. It breathes, it throws off waste, it absorbs, it gives messages to our body on touch. But it's broken. And it's also a covering. So now it's broken, the dirt goes in, immediately the body goes into action and sends the lymphatic system to swell it, to try and actually constrict all the little blood vessels, to try and stop any aliens going to the rest of the body. And then the white blood cells are sent there to do their work, and of course that's what the pus was. But you remember what I said earlier? Often in an injury, the blood tends to sit and pool in the area. So what we want to do is move the old blood out and move the new blood in. And the best way to do that is the alternating hot and colds. And you can see why after what I've shown you. I said, what have you been doing? She said, well, he's on his 2nd course of antibiotics. He's having painkillers and sleeping tablets to sleep at night, and he's 7. I said, can I try something? You always get permission. Please. So instead of getting 2 big bowls, I got 2 mugs. And I put hot water in one, and I put cold water with some ice cubes in the other. And I said to the little boy, put your good finger into the hot. You see, you've got to work with them. Does that feel right? Yeah. Now put your sore finger in. Ow! Okay, we'll put a little cool in. Are you okay with that? Yes. So we keep it there for 3 minutes. And then we put it in. Now it was New Zealand, and you don't have to put ice in the water in New Zealand. It is so cold. 30 seconds. And then a little bit of boiling water into the hot. He was watching me. I said, put your good finger in. I said, now put your other finger in. And he knew that if it was too sore, I would adjust it, but he could handle it. In fact, it's really good for you to do it to yourselves and just feel what it feels like when you do it. Just do it with a finger in a mug. And 3 minutes in the hot, 30 seconds in the ice cold. By the time he went to his second 30 seconds, a smile came on this little boy's face. What's happening to that little boy? He's getting pain relief. And we did it 3 times. And the 3rd hot, I could make a little hotter. And then you could not stop him smiling. In, what did we work out, 10.5 minutes, 11 minutes, he had got more relief than the painkillers. And what are the painkillers doing to his kidneys? What are the painkillers doing to his stomach? This simple treatment, that's all it was. And then I made a very tiny grated potato poultice and put it on his finger. And the rest of the morning, while I talked to his mother, he just sat there smiling at me. He had relief. When he got home, his mother told me later, she said that when they got home, he said, "Mum, can we do that again?" Because I would imagine after a few hours it's starting to build up again. And then, see, what you've got to listen. If you will diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord your God, your body speaks. So she did it again. She changed the poultice. And that potato is drawing, so you discard the potato and put a fresh one on. And then in the evening, she took it off. He had his shower. They did the hot and colds again. Each time, the finger's getting less and less and less. Most pain is due to inflammation, pressure. There's a lot of pressure on that. The next morning, when they took the poultice off, all the contents, all the waste that was in that finger, all came out with the poultice. So now he's left with a finger the right size with a big crater in the middle of it. They did the hot and colds again. Do I need to tell them what to do next? No. Now we need to keep that covered. We need to let that heal. Now if it gets swollen again, what do? Hot and colds again. And it's quite possibly the next day she only needed to do it in the morning and maybe in the evening. Quite possibly only needed to do a grated potato overnight. But just keep that covered, put a covering on it until the skin grows. That little boy slept that night, the best sleep he'd had for a week and a half. No need for painkillers now. No need for sleeping tablets. The mother said, "What will I do about the antibiotics?" I said, "I will leave that up to you. I have no authority to tell you what to do, but I can tell you what I would do, but I don't think I have to because I think you can guess." You see, it hadn't done much, had it, in 10 days. Now I'd like to tell you a story in the highlands of Papua New Guinea a few years ago. I was taken to a village and there was no running water, there was no electricity. And there was quite a group of people that lived there. I had an interpreter and they were showing me around, and there was and the kitchen was out the back. It just was a fire with sort of sticks to make like a bench. And they were showing me around, and then I saw that there was a pipe coming out of the ground. They'd connected it to a little spring, so the people went and gathered their water there. And then as I'm looking at the people and smiling, my attention was taken to a man, and I could tell by his body language he was in pain. And his hand was wrapped up in a cloth. And I said, What's happening with this man? Looked about 38. And so we went over to him, and through the interpreter I found out that it was a hunting accident. A knife had gone through and almost came out the other side. And now the hand was all swollen, and I could tell this man was in a lot of pain. So then you act very quickly. I said, "Can I try something?" He was willing to try anything. Now, there's no fridges, so there's no ice. But there was a fire with a kettle. So we got 2 bowls just like this. I put some cold water in, and I put kettle water in, and I got the temperature what he could handle. And we got cold water straight from the spring. It was quite cold, it was out of the ground. And there was quite a gathering now to watch what I was doing. And the man was looking at me frowning. So I put the hand in hot water. They probably thought it was a strange white woman here. How long did I leave it there? 3 minutes. And then in the cold for 30 seconds. And I could see once it was in the cold, there was almost a sigh of relief. I heated the water up with the kettle. put it back in the hot, and the man began to smile. Now, because water can take that heat out of the body, this water is now a little warmer. So I asked them to tip it out and get some fresh spring water. And back into the cold, the man's smile got bigger. And he was talking to all the people, and they started to smile. No one was frowning anymore. And then we did it the third time and the third time again. And I could tell by his body language, his body had relaxed, and the smile on his face told me that I think his pain levels were almost 10 out of 10. You could see him, the way he was breathing and the whole body tightening, and this had totally relaxed him. Now, I'd endeavour to say that his pain levels came from a 10 out of 10 to even a 5 out of 10. 5 out of 10 is bearable. And again, how long did that take? Well, we're looking at 10, 11 minutes, maybe another minute to go and get a bit more cold water. But not long, not long. That's why this is such a powerful treatment, especially in the area of pain relief. So what am I going to do now? So I said from my interpreter, does anyone know of any green leaves that are healing? And someone knew of some green leaf, so they went and got some green leaves, and I crushed them with my hand to get the juice out of them. And then I put that on his hand, and I said, does anyone have a bandage? Well, someone had a bandage, and they ran up and got a bandage, and I bandaged it onto his hand. And then I asked them if I could pray. And I said, we'll pray to the God of heaven. And they all bowed their heads while we prayed that God would bless this poultice. In fact, I think they would have done anything that I asked. And you might have read that these health principles are the opening wedge to many people's hearts to tell them about the great God of heaven. And then I was shown other areas in the village, and this man just walked behind me the whole time, telling everyone and pointing to me and pointing to his hand. Do I have to tell them what to do next? No, I have just taught them, haven't I? As soon as that hand gets, they know exactly what to do. In fact, everyone that was there that day did not know this, but they knew enough to know that that worked and it was powerful. In fact, even if you do it every 2 hours. I don't know what happened, but I endeavour to say that that man did heal, because all he had to do is what I had shown him. What would have happened if I hadn't turned up that day? They're a very poor village. They can't afford to go to the doctor. They can't afford to do... And what would the doctor have done? Maybe given antibiotics, which I guess would have slowed that down. But maybe when the antibiotics wore off, maybe it would have swollen up again. Maybe he would have got blood poisoning. Maybe he would have lost his hand. I don't know. But, oh, my heart wanted to go back and teach the people in that village. But do you know that I already gave a fairly powerful meeting in just showing them what to do when that man was in so much pain. So you can put your fingers, you can put your hands, you can even put your elbow if you have a painful elbow, a swollen elbow. You can put your toes, your feet, and our exercise coordinator was playing soccer with the teenagers, and he fell and hurt his knee. So what he did was he had 2 buckets, but he got longer buckets so that his knee and foot could go in it, and he got on his hands and knees on the floor, and he put his knee in the hot for 33 minutes, and then he put his knee where there's a will, there's a way. But another treatment that is very powerful with the alternating hot and colds is Sitz baths. Sitz, C-I-T-Z, is German for sit. So sitting in hot for 3 minutes, sitting in ice cold for 30 seconds, and doing that 3 times. Why would you do that? for any problems in the abdominal area. So when the person sits, let's say we've got a very little person here, when they sit, you want the water to go to about their belly button and mid-thigh. It's an excellent treatment for hemorrhoids. You might have heard of fissures, where there's been a canal that has come to another area and made an opening from the colon, and sometimes things like that can happen, especially if people are sitting down in trucks, in fact a lot all day, and not exercising, and maybe they're a bit constipated. You can get major problems in that area. We had a young man that came to our retreat. He was only 14, and he had a major problem. If he had diarrhea, he would have accidents in the classroom. Can you imagine how embarrassing that is for a 14-year-old? And if he had constipation, he didn't have the accident. So that told me two things. Number one, there's a problem in his gut. If you've got constipation sometimes, diarrhea sometimes, in fact often it's called irritable bowel. But he had another problem. His anal sphincter was not tight enough to be able to hold if he had diarrhea. He'd already had one operation in the area. You don't want an operation in that area because it's very easy for a cut can happen to nerves, and the poor young guy was only 14. And the doctors did not want to do another operation, but the parents were at a loss. What do we do? And so an auntie told them about our health retreat. So when this young man came, we instantly, of course, changed his diet. And as he went through the week, he began to learn that McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken and all your fast foods aren't the best for the gut, especially if there's irritation there. And we gave him Sitz baths twice a day. Twice a day he sat in the morning and in the evening. He sat in the hot and he sat in the cold. He had no accidents at our retreat. In fact, he had a lot of fun at our retreat because he really enjoyed it. And then in the final consultation, I said to him, now I have to make a program reachable for a 14-year-old. And a 14-year-old going to school, how can they possibly do this before school? Maybe on the weekend he could. So I said, of an evening, how long does it take? 10 minutes, maybe a little bit longer to set up. I said, do it every evening just before you have your night shower. Once a night should be enough. At the retreat we did it twice. We gave it a really good kickstart. So it's a matter of finding 2 tubs that he could sit in. Being 14, he was probably only about my size, so it was quite easy to find a tub. Maybe you'd have a tub about this big. And he did it. And I said, do it for 30 days, don't stop. Every time you do it, you're actually increasing the power of it compared to the last one. So you do it, say, Monday, Tuesday, it's more powerful than it was Monday. Wednesday, it's more powerful than it was Tuesday because the cells in the body know what's happening and they're ready and they respond and work with it. I didn't hear, and sometimes you don't hear. So it was about 3 years later, I think by this time he was 18, and a relative came to the retreat. She said, have you heard it from Tom? I said, no, we haven't. What happened? She said, he's totally healed. He is totally healed. He has had no more accidents since the health retreat. So can you imagine what that anal sphincter does, going from the hot into the ice cold? The blood goes to the area, the blood feeds the nerves, the nerves wake up, the feelings in his anal sphincter. It's a very powerful treatment. So you could do it for irritable bowel. You could do it for any type of irritable bowel, from Crohn's disease to colitis. You could do it for constipation. You could do this for kidney problems. You could do this for women, fibroids in the uterus, cysts on the ovaries. For endometriosis, any problem in the uterine area. You could do this for a man who had prostate problems. So any problem in that reproductive or that abdominal area where the reproductive organs are is powerful. So we had a man come to our retreat, it was probably 6 months ago now, and I don't work at the retreat anymore because I have a ban on me. And the staff came to me and they said, Barbara, this man is in his early 70s, his legs are swollen, he has prostate cancer, his stomach is like a hard and swollen, and yet he's quite skinny. He can hardly drink, he can hardly eat. And so it almost seemed like, what can we do? What can we do? And I said, try the Sitz baths. And so they did. And we have some big tubs at the retreat. And they put twice as much ice as this into the cold. They were quite vigorous with their cold. And I left it with them. I saw the man the next day, and I'd also got, I suggested he jump on the rebounder. The legs had gone down, the stomach had gone down. Now this is 24 hours after, and he was able to drink. So this was Sunday, he was swollen. They did the Sitz bath Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night. I saw him on Wednesday because Michael and I eat with the guests if we're there. And this man had a big plate of food, and then he had seconds. Now, do you remember on Sunday, he couldn't eat, he couldn't even have the meal. His stomach was down, his legs were down. It was dramatic, the effect of just the hot and colds. They called me a few days later, they said his legs are swollen again, and his stomach's swollen again, and he's in pain. And I said, did he have the Sitz baths last night? They said, we don't know. So they asked him. No. I said, you can't not. Maybe the day will come. But he had advanced prostate cancer, and maybe he won't make it. But do you remember what I said that we say to guests that come with cancer? We say we've seen 3 outcomes. One outcome is we see a turnaround. The second outcome is we see 6 months go to 6 years. And the third outcome is the last days are made more comfortable. So even if this man doesn't make it, these hot and colds make life a little more comfortable until time passes. I don't know what's happening right now, but everyone at the health retreat saw what happened to this man, staff and guests, to the point where my husband got the carpenter to install Sitz baths. I have to tell you, I've been wanting these Sitz baths installed for 15 years. And this treatment showed everyone this is a very powerful treatment. And so one of the staff, she's a lady in her early 50s, she said, Barbara, I've got terrible menstrual cramps. So I advised the yam cream. And now that we've got the Sitz bath set up, it's like little tubs, stainless steel tubs, and steps up to them, so it's a lot easier to do, and the hose to fill them, and a plug so that it can just run away, so it's a lot easier when they're set up like that. And she could hardly sleep with the cramps, and so she decided to do the hot and colds. She said when she finished the hot and colds, she had no more cramps. She said it was in the evening. She wondered how she was going to get to sleep. She did them about 9 o'clock at night. She went to bed and she slept all night with no cramps. She said, I can't believe how effective and how powerful this treatment is. And this is why I began with the basic reason why it is such a powerful treatment. Now, if someone has a very swollen ankle, maybe they've sprained it and it's twice the size. In a situation like that, you might not want to do 3 minutes hot. You might want to do less hot and more cold because it is so swollen. And so sometimes we advise 1 minute hot, 1 minute cold, and do that 3 times. So it's not a hard and fast rule, this, but we have just found in the textbooks, Knipe's book on nurses, Agatha Thrash has also, she has passed now, an American doctor, she wrote books on hydrotherapy, but probably the most exhaustive is Dr. Kellogg. Dr. Kellogg, and of course he's from the mid-1800s, and he was the medical director of a health retreat in Battle Creek in America with 1,000 beds. Isn't that exciting? Wouldn't it be wonderful to have a hospital that did all this? And as a medical doctor, he did surgery too. I read an autobiography of a doctor who worked with him. And my Scottish mum in Scotland, she's my adopted Scottish mum, she had it in her bookshelf and she said, my father, now my Scottish mum's well into her 80s, so her father, so what are we looking at now? We're looking at about the 1930s or 1940s. She said, he used to do work for Dr. Brown, and Dr. Brown wrote the book, and Dr. Brown worked with Dr. Kellogg in the late 1800s. So I read the book, and it was an incredible book. She said that Dr. Kellogg would do everything possible to avoid surgery. They would do the hydrotherapy, they would do the poultice therapy, and in many cases he did not have to do surgery. How nice that all other avenues are explored before surgery. So how many people could have avoided surgery for various ailments if only they knew about the hot and colds? So when we were in Melbourne, this is 15 years ago, we had a lady attend our program and she said, Barbara, I've got this flap of skin near my anus. She said, the doctor said it's a simple surgery to just cut it off. I said, I wouldn't touch it. I said, is it causing you problems? No. You can evacuate fine? Yes. So why do you want it removed? Because that is such a tender area. She said, oh, I just don't want it there. I said, well, the choice is yours, but if it was me, I would not. 1 month later, her husband rang me. He said, my wife had the operation. He said, she's just lying on the floor groaning 24 hours a day with the pain. I said, bring her to the retreat. And this lady, she could hardly walk. She was only late 30s, and she was a marketing manager, a mover and shaker of a woman. Everything in her life had stopped. She was in constant pain. Can you imagine the cutting and the stitches in that very delicate area? She was on painkillers, but they weren't doing it anymore, so we did the hot and colds. And that was when we had the retreat in Melbourne, and they were set up in the health retreat, so it was a lot easier to do. And we were doing it twice a day. And at night, overnight, we put aloe vera, a slab of aloe vera on that area, and then put like a little pad there to hold it in place. The aloe vera contains a growth stimulant. And I think in Nairobi, aloe vera would grow very well. Is that right? Yeah, every home should have a big pot of aloe vera. Do you remember what it contains? A growth stimulant. And there's one way you can prove this. Cut 1 inch off your aloe vera leaf and just note how long it takes to grow a skin over that cut. That skin will grow within a few hours because it contains a growth stimulant. And so we put the aloe vera. Aloe vera is in the slab of aloe vera gel. It's very soothing, it's very cooling, and it's healing. And you probably are aware that it's one of the most powerful things you can use for burns. But when you use it for a burn, you must leave the leaf intact, the skin intact, I should say. So if the leaf's like that, we cut it down there, so now you've got 2 slabs. And leave the skin intact. If you just put the gel on a burn, the edges dry out, and when you try and take it off, it can rip the skin off the edges. But if you leave the skin of the aloe vera intact when you lay the gel slab down on the burn, it will not dry out. So that's handy to know. The lady was with us for 5 days because she arrived a few days after our retreat had begun. That lady walked out the door. Isn't that incredible? Sitz baths twice a day. Now, she didn't have Sitz baths at home, but she had so much healed that we just said, keep the aloe vera on at night and don't go back to work yet. Could you imagine the pain when that lady did her daily evacuation? That cut and those stitches there. And when she was on the painkillers constipate because they're very drying. So can you see we also gave her herbs to loosen the bowels so that that would be easier for her to go, and then the Sitz baths and the aloe vera, remarkable effect. Now, what would be the medical option for her? There actually is none except heavy painkillers. It will eventually heal, but the pain that poor woman had to endure in the period of time that it takes to heal. So it is such a pity that nurses no longer do the hydrotherapy, and you can see why that is so. It takes time, and also in many hospitals they have temperature blocks on the taps. You can't even get really hot water just in case someone would burn. Common sense isn't very common today, is it? Don't put your hand under a hot tap. What about the chest? How would you do hot and colds on a congested chest? Well, that's where you can use cloths. And so and this is where you can make compresses. So let's say we're going to do hot and colds with this. What you do is you twist it like this. And then you have a bowl of boiling water. And then you dip that into the boiling water, and then you twist and wring it out. Twist and wring it out. I usually just keep those ends dry so I can touch them. You could use rubber gloves, of course. But if you twist and pull, it'll wring it out quite nicely. And then you let it drop. And then you quickly fold it like this. It'll still be very hot. And then you place it on the chest. Now, you don't place it on the skin. I'm not putting it up any higher because my microphone's there. But you just have a dry towel, and then you'll put it's hot steam, and then you place that on top. And then you cover the whole area with another thick towel. And you don't press it because this is boiling water, hot steam. And if the person says, it's burning me, you lift that up and then you wipe the moisture off the skin and then lay it back down. Is it okay now? No, it's too hot. Take it up and you wipe the moisture off and then put it back down. Okay now? Yes. And how long do you leave it there for? 3 minutes. And then you take that off and you get a cloth, dip it in the cold water and wipe it over the area. Wring it out again, more, because as soon as you wipe that, it heats up. So you keep dipping it. In fact, it's a good idea to have 2. You call them face cloths. Do that for 30 seconds. And then you cover that area with the towel, and you discard that towel. Because if you use that towel again, it won't get boiling because it's already wet. And then you get another towel. And you do the same thing. And you lift it up, quickly roll it over. Get another dry cloth. You're going to go through a lot of towels. And then put the pack on again. And what I find is, whereas with the first pack that you put on, the person can go, no, it's burning, burning. So you lift it up, and I've never burnt anyone. And you just wipe that moisture off the skin and lay it back down. And I have found that with the second and the third, as with the alternating, they can handle it hotter. But you always watch the person's face. You can tell straight away, too hot, we just lift it up, wipe the moisture off the skin. But every time you do it, you must put another dry towel there. So you'll go through, as I said, a few towels. So it's good to have a few towels. This is a great size towel. You don't want great big thick towels. The only time you want a great big thick towel is to put over the whole top. But to keep it hot. But I would often use wool. That's why I search around in your second-hand shops for old woolen jumpers, because the wool insulates and it'll keep it hot longer. And if someone's having an asthma attack, remember you're telling them how to breathe through their nose, long, slow and deep, but the steam going through the chest wall dilates the bronchioles. And often after that, what did we decide? 10, 12-minute treatment, you see them breathing a lot easier. Now, I recited to you what page 127 of the Ministry of Healing said. Nature's process of healing and upbuilding is gradual. To the impatient it seems slow. The use of natural remedies requires an amount of care and effort that many are not prepared to give. But the reward that you get far exceeds the effort that you put into it. So you can do compresses like that on the chest. You can do compresses like that on the back for back pain. We had one girl who was to have back surgery because she had some bulging discs, and she was staying with us before she flew home. She was from Holland. So at night she would lay down on her stomach and I would put these along her spine. So it would be like that. This is a great size. So I'd wring it out, and then if you roll it up like that, you can keep it hot, but you've got rubber gloves on because it's so hot. And then you have your dry towel on the spine, and then you quickly roll it out, lay it on, and then quickly put another towel or the blanket over the top. And remember, it's steam, and that's going to go through and relax. And that managed that girl's back pain until she got home. She was very, very happy. I understand that in some cases a painkiller may be necessary, but remember what Dr. Kellogg did. He did everything possible to avoid surgery and to avoid going to the painkillers, which are addictive, which have all serious side effects. But the hydrotherapy is a very powerful treatment. Now, are we up to having a break? I'm not sure of time. 5 more minutes and then we'll have a break. Okay, because there's a few other things I'd like to show in the next one. But what I'd like to show you now here is ice. And ice is the best anti-inflammatory that there is. But let's say, and this is something you can try on yourself, let's say that my hand is swollen and I want to get that inflammation down. So the best way is to put ice in a little cloth like this, and I massage the area for 7 seconds. And after 7, and if I hold it on, it's even harder, but if you massage there, it's a little easier, and then you take it off for 7 seconds. And then you put it back on for 7 seconds. Because if you put it straight on, it can be very painful. So you just take it off. Ooh, that's painful. That's easing now. It's probably almost 7 seconds. The pain's gone. So I go back again and I do another 7 seconds. And it's just starting to get very painful, so I take it off. And if you keep doing that, often within 5-10 minutes, the whole area is numb and you can keep that ice on that area. And when the area is numb, of course, you see, that's the pain. You can feel the pain, so you keep stopping. I was out in the paddock one day with a girl and a horse had just trodden on her foot. And that's what we did. We did on, off, and it stopped the swelling because it's the swelling that usually causes the most pain. Now, the week before I came away, I was only home for 3 weeks. I'd been in the US for 2 months. But I arranged this so I could see all my children, all my grandchildren. And before my sons came to my house, I was weeding the garden and not realising that there were a lot of little tiny ticks. And when my son arrived, I said, "Can you look at my back? It feels like ticks." He got 30 ticks off my back. And they're the size of a pinhead. They're so tiny. He said, "Mum, what have you been doing?" Weeding in the garden. And so there were a few on my torso, but most were on my back. So when I go to sleep that night, how does it feel? Itchy. And the worst thing you can do for any bite is scratch. It feels wonderful when you scratch, but when you finish scratching, it's just as itchy, and often you can break the skin, and that's when it can get infected. And I managed to get to sleep, and at 2:30 in the morning I woke up and my torso felt like it was on fire. And all I wanted to do was scratch. So I got up and I got a block of ice. Not easy on your back, but where there's a will, there's a way. I did the ones on my torso, and I would just do it till the pain came. Then I'd do it till the pain came. Then I'd do it till the pain came. And by the time I'd done all my back, and I knew I'd done all my back because there were no more itches, the block of ice had melted. And then I did the front part of my body, a little bit down the side here, and then the other block of ice had gone, and I sat there, no itch at all. I thought, this is a miracle. And all it is ice. And I went to bed and slept the whole night. I didn't have to do that again. I think once at the end of the next day I did. When I went on my morning walk, and I run up and down hills, and the increase in blood went to the tick bites, and but I've got a wonderful cure then. At our retreat we've got the most beautiful creek. It's crystal clear. If you go to our website, in fact even the back of my book, in the back page, you'll see my sister-in-law there getting water up out of the creek. It is crystal clear. It is as clear as this, the water in our creek. So when I run up and down the hills, on the way home, I go down and dive in the creek, and it was very cold because it's, our cold comes in the middle of the year, and always after Easter, it gets very cold. And it was very cold, but I was hot from running, and I just sat in that creek. It's very hard to stay in there for 30 seconds. But I did, and I found it easier if I keep my hands out of the cold water and breathe very deeply through my nose, and so no itch. No itch then, and I was able to get dressed and go back, and that's how I handled it. I know that if I'd scratched those tick bites, I would still be having trouble with them. So you never scratch. You must never scratch. And I saw a man recently, he's our maintenance man, and his arms were just swollen and red, and I could see where he'd been scratching. I said, "You must never scratch." He said, "How?" I said, "Ice." Just ice it. Just ice it. So any itch, what's the cure? A block of ice. All you need is a little washer and a block of ice. If someone's got eczema or psoriasis and it's very itchy, what do? Ice. And they might only have to do that twice a day. And when I was in Alabama a few years ago, I got about 6 bites on me. On my legs, my arms, a couple on my torso. And I said to my friend Cynthia, "What are these bites?" She said, "Chiggers." I said, "What are chiggers? I've never heard of chiggers." And they're a little mite that burrows under your skin. She said, "You'll be scratching for a month." And I thought, not I. And I only had to ice them twice a day. After my morning walk, didn't have a creek there to jump in. And also after my evening shower, the heat brought the blood to the bites and they really started itching. And it only took me 15 minutes and I would just freeze until it pained, freeze until it pained, and then I went over every bite twice and I went to sleep. And they were resolved in 10 days. Now the people that live there, they all get chiggers from time to time, and I love walking through the forest. I suppose if I didn't walk through the forest I wouldn't get them, but it's so lovely. They couldn't believe it. They have never heard of anyone getting over their chiggers in 10 days. And it was ice. Every freezer should have ice. Ice is an incredible treatment. If you've got a sore throat, suck on ice. How simple is that? So any area where there's an injury or swelling, you can use ice. My daughter jumped from the tank onto the veranda and missed the veranda when she was about 11, fell on the ground. She was on the ground crying. And I said, "Where are you hurting? I've got to find out where the injury is." My leg below the knee. So I knew we could lift her. And she could not bear ice. She just cried the more. And so what I did was I did hot and colds. Because if there's swelling, you really don't want heat there. But I did a minute hot and a minute cold. And a minute hot and a minute cold. And she could bear that. And then we crushed up or limped the cabbage leaves and put that around her leg. And she had minimal pain. So combining what we learnt last night with these simple hydrotherapy treatments is very powerful. You know, it's interesting now where I put that ice, that's very warm. It's warmer than the rest of my hand because it brings the blood to the area. So we might have a break now, and after the break there's a couple more hydrotherapy treatments I'd like to show you. 2-minute break. We're having a 2-minute break. Continuing on with our hydrotherapy or water therapy, there is a few other treatments I wanted to explain to you. And one of them I have had experience with before, but I'd like to tell you about an experience that happened last year when I was in Sweden. I was teaching at a health school, and one of the students there, she was a lady in her mid-60s. I came in one morning and she looked very upset, and some of the students came and said she walked through the forest half the night. She was in so much pain with her knee. She'd already told me about her knee. When she was only about 16, she was in a very serious car accident where she was thrown out of the car and her knee was badly damaged. And she had already had something like 10 operations on that knee. And it's a miracle that she's alive and it's a miracle that she can walk okay. But her knee was paining her. And so when I came in, she was sitting down and a couple of people had an ice pack on her knee. And she was crying a little, it was hurting still. And I took the ice pack off and I put my hand over her knee. And because the ice pack had been on, the bone area was ice cold, but right in the middle, it felt like burning heat. So the ice wasn't the best, because sometimes the ice can just push it further in. So in this situation, the ice wasn't the best. And I used another treatment, and this is one of the first hydrotherapy treatments that was ever used. I got a bowl of cold water, not ice, just cold. Looks like this must have a screw lid or something. Just comes off. Having a bit of trouble here. I actually don't know what to do. Oh, that looked easy. It was blocked. I just want the water in. So what I did was I just put water in a bowl. I said, quickly get me a bowl and get me a cloth. And I put the cloth in the bowl. And then now it wasn't dripping like this and it wasn't squeezed out tight. So it was just squeezed enough so it's not dripping, and I laid that over her knee. Do you know what I had to do? I had to get the heat out of the knee. And when I put this cold cloth on, within 10 seconds, the cloth's hot. Where has the heat come from? Right inside her knee. So her knee, it had a crack in the bone because of all the operations, and I could feel way down in there, heat. And so I squeezed the cloth out again and put it over. As soon as I could feel it heating up, I'd put it over like this. There's still a little bit of a drip there, and so it's nice to have a towel there so that it catches any drips. It's hot again, I do it again. And everyone was watching, and one of the students was a doctor. And she didn't quite know what to do. Oh, it's getting hot, do it over again. Oh, it's getting hot, do it again. And I just did that again and again and again and again, maybe 20 times. Can you see the ice wasn't the best? In that situation, what you're always looking for is response. And when the ice was on the knee, this lady was getting no relief. And they had a block of ice from the freezer. You know those freezer packs? That is so uncomfortable too. You always are looking for keeping your guest comfortable. And after about 10 cloths, changing. With a hand you could put it over the bowl. You could even put it in the bowl. But with a knee, you see, you can't do that. And she was probably about 5'10", this lady, and she wasn't terribly overweight, but just a little, and it would have been just too difficult for her to kneel down on her hands and knees and put her knee. So you've often got to adjust your treatment to what the person can do and can handle. Like with my daughter, 11 years old, she could not handle the ice. So then you adjust, what can we do now? And after 10 cloths on the knee, I put my hand on the knee again, and I would say the heat had reduced by about 50%, and the lady had stopped crying and was chatting and laughing. What does that tell you? And one of the reasons she was crying is because her husband was there too, and he'd said to her, if you don't stop crying, we're going to have to go home. Oh, that made her cry even more. So she came in and the ladies were around her. Now, do you know something else can happen? The pain in her knee had triggered memories. Her best girlfriend was killed in that car accident. Can you see that sometimes injuries can spark some memories? So I hugged her tight. But by the 10th cloth, she was chatting and laughing. By the 20th, I put my hand over her knee and I got all the students to feel that. I said, there's no burning heat there. It's just the heat of the body. And look, all it was just cold cloths. So that is such a simple treatment, because the water is the best conductor of hot and cold. And when you put that wet cloth on that heated area, it's pulling the heat out of it. It's into the cloth, cool it up again, and just keep doing it until you get the heat right out of it. Very simple treatment, and it can be done anywhere in the body. And sometimes you may not have ice, but you've always got cold cloths. Now, regarding my tick bites, I look like Spotty Dotty, but there's no inflammation in them. And whenever there was, I got that down with the dipping in the creek, and that's not always possible. Could I have done cold cloths? I wouldn't have got relief as quickly. So in the case of those tick bites, ice on the area, freezing it. And with psoriasis, say if someone has psoriasis and it's very painful there, and the man I told you about, he'd scratched so much, we've got another problem now. The whole thing's inflamed from the scratches, the skin's damaged, so either cold cloths or ice. And sometimes you can try them both. And that brings me to another area I want to talk to you about, and that is fever. So the first thing to remember with fever, this starts with F2, is it's your friend. It's your friend. Fever has a purpose. It is there for a reason. Oh, and I forgot to tell you the rest of the story with the lady with the knee. I looked up after half an hour and saw her husband in the corner smiling with great relief. We'd fixed his wife and they could stay. So back to fever now. Fever is your friend. It has a purpose. Something else to remember with fever is that water puts the fire out. Fire out. Now with this lady with the knee, it felt like that knee had a fever burning inside of it. And can you see the water put that fire out? The third thing to remember, but I will expand on the water a little bit more in a minute, of some treatments that you can do. So this can be water inside and outside. There's only one part of your body that does not like getting hot, and that's your brain. And if if the person is well hydrated, they will not convulse. So how can you hydrate them if they are vomiting? They can suck on ice and then just little bits will go in. Or you can give them an enema. Just maybe a cup and a half or 2 cups of water by an enema kit. That can hydrate the body very quickly. Also laying the person in a tepid bath. Not hot, not cold. Tepid. For me, that would be lukewarm. For them, it feels a little cool. When they get out of the bath, do you know the temperature of the bath is hotter than when they went in? Where's the heat come from? The water has pulled it out of the body, just like that cloth pulled the heat out. But also laying a person in a tepid bath, if they're dehydrated, the skin will take the water in. So that's one way you can hydrate if you don't have an enema kit and if they're vomiting and they can't hold the water down. Even holding a mouthful of water for a few minutes and then spitting it out, they will have absorbed some of the water. Why would they spit it out? Because they just vomited and they don't want to put any more in. So water puts the fire out on the outside and on the inside. And when the rubbish, all the rubbish is burnt up, when the rubbish is gone because it's all been burnt up, the fire goes out. Then the fire is out. Because the fire, that fever has a purpose. People fear fevers, don't fear fevers. Fever's a wonderful thing. It has a purpose. A double-vaxxed guest came to our retreat early 2021 and gave half of the guests and half of the staff COVID. The double-vaxxed guest. So I got COVID. First day I had a terrible headache. I spent most of the day in bed lying down. I heard Michael say, I think she's gone to sleep, she stopped groaning. The next day I had a high fever. I don't know what the temperature was, I never take the temperature. What did I do? I drank a lot of water. I had several showers, tepid. But I wanted to keep that fever because that fever is burning up the rubbish and also burning up any harmful pathogens in the body. That's its purpose. I had the fever for 2 days. People say, what did you do? I drank a lot of water and I slept a lot and I hardly ate a thing. I think one day by 4 o'clock in the afternoon I had a banana. That was about it. On the 4th day, the fever was gone. Praise God. It's done its job. So instead of being scared of fevers, people should be encouraging them. And that's what we do at our health retreat. We give everyone a fever every afternoon in the steam sauna. They're in the steam sauna for about 10 minutes till they can't bear it anymore. Then they run out and dive in the creek. Then they run back into the steam sauna. We usually do it 3 times. So we create a fever. On the 4th day, I was so tired. If I lay down for half an hour, I could work for 10 minutes. On the 5th day, if I lay down for 10 minutes, I could do half an hour's work, and then I was okay. I didn't fear my fever. I was very happy for it. I just lay down a lot and read a lot. Fever is your friend. The only time I would do something for my children if they had a fever is if they were getting very uncomfortable. And I'd feel up in here and I could feel they were quite hot. And so I would put cool on their forehead. And when a little one, maybe a baby or a 18-month-old, are very hot, they don't want to go in a tepid bath. They want you to hold them. They want you to hold them. And so there's one thing that you can do, and this is a powerful way. So let's say we've got a cloth here. certainly is a cloth. And we're going to wet this cloth. And when you wet the cloth, even if you do it in hot water, when you wring it out, it chills. So you may as well just do cold water. And so you've got your little one with a fever. And they just want you to hold them, but they're so hot. And so you put the cloth down. They won't like this bit. And you lay them here. Oh, they'll cry. And then you quickly wrap it up. And then you quickly wrap them in, let's pretend this is a woolly blanket. You wrap them in the woolly blanket. And you wrap them up. And then they're happy. And then after half an hour, you might take them out and this is hot. Where's the heat come from? Inside the body. You can do it on an adult, and they're usually a little bit more cooperative. And when you do it on an adult, you put the cloth down, but of course this would be a sheet. You put it down, and then the person lays on it, and they might just keep their underwear on. And then you get them to put their arms up and their legs apart. And the first one goes around their torso and between the legs. And then you get them to put their arms down and their legs together. And then this last one goes over the whole arms and the legs. And then you very quickly put the blanket over them. It feels uncomfortable, as you can imagine, because it's a wet sheet. But as soon as the woolen blanket goes on, it must be wool. It cannot be anything other than wool. If it's cotton, the cotton will get wet. But if it's wool, it insulates it. And often the person will fall asleep. And you can put your hand down there, even after 10 minutes, and you can feel the heat in the sheet. And this was a cold, wet sheet. And often that will just bring the temperature down so it's bearable. It's called the wet sheet pack. And that's probably one of the most effective ways to get a temperature down. Again, you don't want it to go away. You just want to bring it down so it's bearable. There's another thing you can do with a child. You can lay them just with their underpants on, and you lay them on a towel, and then you put another towel on top. And then you get a bowl with not freezing cold water, just lightly cold, and then you get their arm out and you sponge it. And it's going to be like this, see, a little bit wet. And you sponge the arm, and then you dry the arm. And then you get the other arm. And then you just sponge the arm and dry it. And then you'll do the leg. Then you'll do the other leg. And then you might have another towel on the top over that part, and you'll do their torso. And then you get them to go on their stomach. And you'll do the whole process again. And often, by the time you've done the whole body, you've brought the temperature down. Because as with the lady with the volcano in her knee, and how this cloth pulled the heat out, so it will as you sponge little by little that body. So that's another thing that you can do. Because some children, if you try and wrap them up in the wet cloth, they might even get almost hysterical. You have to gauge the child. And that's why I say to parents, the whole time you're doing this, you must have a smile on your face. You must have a smile on your face. It's like one mother, she emailed me, she said, there's something terribly wrong with my child. He's sleeping all day, he's hardly eating, and he usually runs around. I said, he's got a cold or he's sick. Let him lie all day. He'll get over it. She emailed me the next day, I think he's got pancreatitis. I said, where'd you get that from? I've got an appointment to see the gastroenterologist. And the child's 5. I said, do you know the child's body is dealing with something. Just make sure he's well hydrated. And then I said to this mother, every time you go into that room, smile. The child should not see a frown on your face. I would not take my child to a gastroenterologist. 3 days later, he's better. Thank you. Children get sick. Children get fevers. Work with the body. The body has been designed to heal itself. We just need to work with it. Don't you thank God for water? Don't you thank God for the 3 different ways that we can use water to work with the healing powers in the body? Today has just been a little nugget, but I've given you enough. I've given you enough so that you can handle just the simple ailments. Shouldn't every mother and father know this? Actually, every human being. Actually, everyone that lives in a body. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, where we continue our journey of discovery of the basic conditions for healing.
Thank you very much. I have enjoyed the session, and I've learned a few things. I've learned not a few, many things. And I love the cool sheet pack. You need to try it tonight. You'll sleep like a baby. Before we close, I just want to talk about this book by Barbara, Self-Heal by Design. You need to get a copy for yourself. We have them here at the center in Nairobi, and I'm sure you can buy some online in case you're very far away. It will help you answer many questions.
Very hard to buy online.
Oh, really?
It is.
Okay, so if you're around Nairobi, this is the time to get your copy. We have them at our center here in Nairobi. We're going to just spend a few minutes to see if we have questions for this audience here. So we'll wrap up for you at home. We will say goodbye. I didn't see any questions. So we are going to close with a word of prayer and continue with our audience here. Shall we pray? Dear God, we're so thankful for the power of water and how simple it is and how everyone can have good night's sleep. Our pain in our body can be relieved by just being obedient to simple laws of nature. Help us to practice this and to teach another. For this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much and see you tomorrow. Mm-hmm.